When I met Jonny Greenwood in Abbey Road Studios last month, he explained how this piece of music, which was originally commissioned by Radio 3, came to be used by Paul Thomas Anderson for the film's opening 12 minutes of just music and action.
The first contact I got from him was that he'd heard a fan's bootleg recording of this piece I wrote for the BBC Concert Orchestra. It was so exciting because until then it had just been utterly abstract, really. It was based on car journeys when I was a kid, and you'd listen to a song on a cassette over and over again until everyone was sick of it, and then they'd turn it off and you just hear the engine. And I used to pretend I could still hear the music, and if you did that hard enough you could eventually hear the whole song as though it was playing in amongst the noise. So the idea with that piece originally was to try and reproduce that, so when you have everyone making this wall of noise, because orchestras are human and they make mistakes and they can't all play at exactly the same volume as each other, you get certain notes poking out, and it's always going to be little bits of unintentional melody made from this thing, which, because it's not abstract, it's this human, like, living, breathing thing, an orchestra doing it. And then suddenly he's put it up against this big American landscape, and it just did that magical thing that sometimes happens when, you know, picture and music help each other out and make a bigger and better third thing. I mean, that piece also, it was meant to be based on an 808 drum machine. I thought, I can turn an orchestra into a drum machine because, you know, you've got Penderecki's effect of making white noise, and in the studio we often make drum machines out of white noise, so I thought it'll just work.
How do you make a drum machine out of white noise?
Well, white noise is just, and you cut the white noise up into sections and there's our hi-hat. And what happens when you try it with an orchestra is they can't do it because they're not accurate enough. There's all these mistakes in it. So I tried doing the rhythmic thing and it didn't work. So I tried to make a block chord of white noise, and even that can't work, because to make it work everyone has to play a different frequency at exactly the same volume as everyone else, and it can't be done. So you hear this mistake. And listening to these recordings, I just got more and more excited, because I thought, well, that's why it's so great, is because it's not a blank, cold thing that's just a noise. It's this amazing sound that's filling the room, and it's full of all these human inputs to the music. That's why I was excited about it. But visually, I thought of nothing to do with it until I saw where Paul put it in the film.
Well, when you just described earlier being in a car as a child and imagining the music happening,
yeah,
that's a very visual. You've painted an image of yourself in that car. That's a very visual memory.
Yeah.
An emotional memory.
Well, I think our brains often fill in music that isn't there, and that's really... It's like when you turn off a vacuum cleaner because you think there's a radio on, and there isn't, and there never was, or there was no doorbell, and put it in there. There was that idea as well. Just, it's such a complicated sound, and you can't record it as well. It's the other thing. You have to go and see it to know what the real effect is like, and it completely works in the film. But really, I'm quite against recording these things generally. It's like they make far more sense when you see it and hear it, which isn't, much as it sounds like it, a cheesy plug to come and see the concert. That's genuinely how I feel about music that's orchestral. You have to see it. Penderecki is a great example. You know, people think of his music as being, you know, fingers down a blackboard, difficult to listen to, noise, but it's far different when you hear it live. It's such a quiet, complicated sound. It's a beautiful thing. It's not hard to listen to at all. It's just really fascinating and harmonically complicated, and which makes it beautiful.
How much time when you're performing it, like at the live event that you're going to do, how much time do you actually spend watching the movie?
I'm trying to remember. In the Roundhouse, it wasn't easy. There was often a pillar in the way, and yeah, we decided that it looked quite bad when the orchestra generally are watching the film as well. We're there to kind of play the music, so...
but it must be really hard not to. It's
an
an irresistible thing.
Yeah, in the dress rehearsal we're all watching it, yeah, of course. You've got a half eye on Daniel Day-Lewis's enormous head looming over you. So yeah, it's hard to tear your eyes away.
I know you admire the composer Penderecki and also use his music in The Shining, the kind of score that overwhelms the movie. Are they the kind of scores you want to write?
They are, although as I get older I start to more and more admire the composers who've also have a good sense of melody and can write, because I think that's quite difficult to do. I very rarely see a film and think the score is bad. They're just usually very quiet. And when you take notice of the music, it's usually disturbingly good. And like the other day I saw Michael Clayton.
Yes.
You know the film Michael Clayton?
Yes, yeah.
Has a great score. And, you know, it just passes you by. But if you watch it again and concentrate on the music, it's great music. And I think that's true of most soundtrack work. I mean, as long as it's not, you know, a rom-com with pizzicato strings and, you know, you hear some scores that are just by numbers. But generally they're all amazing.
Are you listening out more for it now?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you hear cliches and you hear those drums that are in every soundtrack nearly. And you hear certain chord changes and effects that you just are going to expect. But aside from that, I think generally soundtrack music is excellent. You know, and you hear so many stories of great soundtracks being written and then just getting thrown away and getting junked, and it's just not important to a lot of filmmakers. It's like makeup or anything else. Your film kind of needs it, and you get someone to do it, and you move on.
And with larger gaps between Radiohead records, can you see yourself writing the score to a Bond or an action movie or, you know, $100 million romantic comedy? I mean, can you see yourself there with the London Philharmonic and all of that? Is that something that you'd like to do?
No, I don't think so, because I think the bigger the film you do, the more control is taken away from the director and usually given to, you know, people higher up the chain. And I'm not sure it'd be as much fun. I mean, that's the other point, is that doing films with, you know, and Lynn Ramsey as well and Paul Thomas Anderson, is how much genuine fun and excitement it's been all the way through. And I wonder if that would change if it became suddenly very financially pressured.
Jonny Greenwood possibly quashing rumours that Radiohead will be doing the Bond title song. Possibly. There Will Be Blood is playing at Meltdown Festival in the South Bank Centre, London, on August the 19th.